Aloha ABBC, it's here. All right. May 13th. Be here at 7:30 a.m. Do not be that student that shows up late and makes us all stay longer. All right. We have 3 rooms we're testing. 263. Make sure your name is on here. 139. Pause if you need to. I'm sure you guys are studying up right now. And 153. Please make sure your name is on that list. Okay? Pause it, look back if you need to. This is the last video. For the first 12 students that show up, I will be here at 6:30 a.m. All right? For those people ready to grind it out for a little bit longer. You never know. You catch up on one little last thing, you're good to go. Charge those calculators. Make sure you got some pretty new batteries in that bad boy. May 13th, 2024. It's a Monday. 13 is my favorite number, which means we are going to rock it. But here we go. I got some major reminders for you guys. Okay. There's even this PowerPoint right here that we didn't even, we were going to go over in class, but we just kept on missing students. So I thought I'd make a video instead. All right. So make sure you're watching this. Tell your friends to do it. Show all your work. Okay. Remember, when you don't just put stuff in your calculator, show your work. Okay. Now, if you don't like something or you did something wrong, don't erase it. You just cross it out. The AP grader will not look at anything that has been crossed out. Do not round partial answers. Store them, right? You only round final answers and really only round it. The rounding key is always to 3 decimal spots unless they tell you to round further. Do not let points at the beginning keep you from getting points at the end. For example, if you don't know how to do part A, but you could do part B, but you need A in order to do part B, just make up an answer for A, use that in your part B, and you are good to go. Okay? Don't you dare touch anything! If you use your calculator to save a cost, write the equation out. If you use your calculator to find a definite integral, write the integral out on your paper. Do not waste time erasing bad solutions. I already talked about that. Do not use your calculator for anything except graph functions. So what happens is sometimes students use their calculators too much and it throws you down a loophole. Okay, use the calculus we learned, use sign analysis. Make sure you label your sign analysis each and every time you use it. Be sure you have answered the question. Remember, the big one is maximum value, minimum value. When they ask for a value, it's the y. So if you get a critical point for the x, plug that bad boy into the OG, all right? And then make sure you get the value, all right? If you can eliminate some incorrect, you guys are so smart. You're not going to be guessing. Eliminate. When in doubt, see it out. We don't need those things because we're going to get all the right answers. If they ask you to justify your answer, think about what needs justification. Remember, table. What's next? Top 10 student errors. F double prime is equal to 0. Does that mean it's a point of inflection? No. The F double prime must be equal to 0, but F double prime must change signs, right? Must. Okay. F of x is a max. If f prime of x is equal to 0. That's not true. Remember, you could get something that looks like that. Okay? You could get something that looks like that. Make sure you check your sign analysis. Average rate of change, don't even look like that. Remember, A rock is f of b minus f of a all over b minus a. Okay, volume by washers, that's a mistake. Okay? Remember, these are mistakes. Okay? Remember, when you do washers, it's capital R squared minus little r squared. Okay, separate and integrate. You must do that. Don't forget your plus C when you take the antiderivative of an indefinite integral. Graders will assume the correct antecedents. That just means make sure you label everything. F prime, F double prime, F. Okay, make sure you label. Here's continuation. Remember, F 1 over X. 1 over X is only the natural log of X if the denominator is linear. Okay, and make sure you chain. Okay, especially when you have this situation where it has a y on it. What do we have to add at the end? A dy dx. Okay, hints for taking the AP Calc exam. When units aren't always units are not always taken account for. Students should get in the habit of always including units because you don't know when they ask for it. So just make sure you do it. The grader may be instructed not to look at any graphs or figures unless you specifically direct the grader to it. So if you use your sign analysis to help you to make a justification, make sure you appropriately have it labeled and make sure you appropriately explain how you are using your sign analysis to come up with your reasoning or your justification. Okay. Graphs and figures should always be labeled. I've said that already 5 times. The students should write their solutions in the appropriate part of their books. Don't assume if you did something for B, the grader is going to use it if you need it for part C. Rewrite it in your part C. 2 words, radian mode. It's just like making a bucket. All right. In the multi-part problem where the solution to part A is needed, we already talked about that. In problems where a descriptive answer is required, the student should make sure to answer the question asked. Make sure you answer, like increasing, decreasing, changing. Make sure you use mathematical words and be clear, concise, and correct when giving explanations. Okay? 3 decimals, unless they ask you to round. Call functions by their names. F of x is f of x, g of x is g of x. If they don't give it a name, you can give it a name by saying let f of x equals this, and then you can use that throughout the rest of your problem. You don't have to convert from degrees to radians. That's old school math stuff. AP exam is not graded on neatness, but a lot of you write neat. If they don't read it, they won't grade it. Don't lose points unnecessarily on the AP Calc. Decimal answers must be accurate to 3 decimal places. Questions have multiple entry parts. Do not give up if you can't do the first part. Use standard mathematical notation. This is old school. Just make sure you write down anything that you put in your calculator, you write down in each appropriate section. Pay attention to units. When they ask for units, you better do it. Cross out the work you don't want to be graded. Don't erase. Do not simplify answers. If you make a mistake simplifying, you will not earn the extra point. Label your graphs appropriately. Do not change the name of things. If it's a T, don't use an X. Okay? Don't change things. If they use X of T to stand for position, use X of T. Don't change it to S of T. Okay? Every pronoun needs an antecedent. So just make sure if you're saying, f of X would be increasing because F prime is greater than 0. Sign charts are not sufficient to justify extreme or inflection points. Make sure you say, right? I've said this many a times. So, like a critical point for F could be a max because F prime changes from positive to negative. Make sure you say that. Okay, just don't say, yo, look at my sign analysis. I drew a little picture like Mr. Tanaka made me draw. No, make sure you explain it. Interpreting a definite integral, be sure to interpret the limits of integration. Okay, and make sure if it's U sub, you change your limits of integration. Drawing a solution curve is not connect the dots. Okay, make sure when sometimes they make us sketch these guys when we have those separate and integrate problems. Make sure you sketch it throughout the entire slope field. If a calculator is permitted, use it. So if you have the opportunity and calculator can help, like Math 8, if you have a derivative, just Math 8. If you take an antiderivative, just Math 9. Use your calculator. Don't waste your time doing the math if a calculator makes it easy and you're allowed to use it. General, these tips are to help you. The grading is not tricky, and you will do well by doing good calculus. The College Board establishes certain grading policies to make sure all exams will be scored the same way. Being aware of these policies can help you avoid losing points unnecessarily. Study hard. You will do well. And that is a wrap on that. But I'm going to keep on going because I want you guys to absolutely dominate this test. Now, listen, I am going to put some really, really big time good things with this. I have so many tips. I have this one guy called... Here, let me show you right here. I'm looking around like crazy for you guys. Those guys that want to grind and save a ton of money in college. The big one I am going to put on there, the one that I want you to focus most on is, shoot, did I lose it? I must have lost it. It's definitely a review. And the review that it is, here it is. last minute AP things to not forget to remember, okay? So like here's the AB one, and I'm gonna post this, and I have answers for all of this. So if you want one little last thing that touches on everything you should know, there's 9 pages of this beauty right here. I have one of these for AB and I have one of these for BC, and guess what? I have all of the keys too. All right, so you can check where you stand. It'd be a really good last thing to do so you know where you stand. Do that. Okay, please do that. And then last but not least here, okay, and I know I didn't want to make this long, but all I do is care about you guys doing so well. Stuff you need to be cold. We talked about this a little bit in class already, but I'm going to talk about it again and give you some notes. Know your logs. Know your logs. There's geometric formulas you should know. This is on my website. You better know all your trig. Circumference, 2 pi r. Point slope form. Know all of those. Quotient, reciprocal identities. There's the Pythagorean identities you should know. When the AP gets dirty, you need to know that sine is an odd function, cosine is an even function. Double half angle. Never really have seen them on there. Okay, but maybe look at it, you never know. Okay, definition of continuity. Please, when you're dealing with the definition of continuity, you must deal with it. Okay, please. You must deal with it. Free response. You got to do the limit as x approaches sum a from the left-hand side must be equal to the limit as x approaches a from the right-hand side. And that must equal, do not forget the function value. If you check for differentiability, you do the same thing, but you take derivatives. You take derivatives. And if you're dealing with differentiability and you're checking derivatives, there's no such thing as like a f of a for that, but you have to check your slopes. And if the slopes are equal to each other, you are good. It means you are smooth if you're continuous. But if they're not equal to each other, you would have a pointy place, possibly a corner, possibly a cusp. All right, here we go. All your trig derivatives, you better know. Make sure you know those dudes. What's the most difficult one? The one that's like, what's the derivative of 9 to the x? What's that derivative? It's 9 to the x, natural log of 9. Remember, it's the same as e to the x, which is really e to the x, natural log of e. Don't forget that. If it's an antiderivative, remember, that's 9 to the x, but then you have to add a 1 over the natural log of 9 plus c. That's important. Most students miss that one on the AP exam. All right, here we go. What do we got here? Asymptotes, all right, vertical asymptote when the denominator is equal to 0, horizontal asymptote, right? We use, if it's a rational function, you use your rules. Intermediate value theorem. What the heck is the intermediate value theorem? Remember, intermediate value theorem means you have to have a continuous function, okay? If this is A, f of A is right there. If this is B, f of B is right there. The IVT, if that's 10, and that's 3, the IVT guarantees every other number in between those dudes is hit. Intermediate, everything in between those numbers is hit. That's the intermediate value. Extreme value theorem means if you have a continuous function, you must have a max and you must have a min. Even if it is a horizontal line, your max and min are the same. All right, here we go. Product rule, quotient rule, low D, high, minus high D, low, all over, low, low. Don't forget to chain. Don't forget to chain. Remember, the biggest one of don't forget to chain is when it's y equals 5xy. That'd be a product rule. Ooh, that's not, yes, it would be dy dx equals, let me just put 7y. Ooh, let's do ddx. This is what I wanted to do, 5y. Okay, that answer right is 5, but then you better add a dy dx. Don't forget to chain things. If it's a rate, remember it's a dt on the bottom. Definition of the derivatives, you got to know these guys. You got to know these guys, right? Normally it shows up on the AP kind of like this. Sine of, pi over 6 plus h minus sine of pi over 6 all over h. And then you should say, oh yeah, that's the derivative. So if that's the derivative, we just need to know where f of x is. Well, this is the OG. So if it's the OG, f of x is there. That means f of x is sine x. So this limit thing means derivative. So just take the derivative of that bad boy, right? That's cosine x. And then it just means to plug in a pi over 6. So it's really just asking that. And so it would be cosine of pi over 6. And we all know what cosine of pi over 6 is, right? It is radical 3 over 2. Niban! All right, there are your derivatives. Make sure you know it. I already went over that front one. Ooh, there's the inverse. There's the inverse on the bottom. Inverse derivative at a equal to 1 over f prime of the other guy. So if on the inverse you have a comma b, that means on the OG you have b comma a. So the other guy would be B. Okay, you take the derivative, you plug it in, and remember it's 1 over. I'm trying to make this quick. Sorry, you guys. There's all of our first derivative test. Second derivative test. If you can show that f prime of something is equal to 0, okay, let's say, and you were to solve and the answer was like 7. Okay, you can use the second derivative. Okay, and if you plug that critical point from the first derivative into the second derivative and you get something that is greater than 0, that means it would be concave up, it would be a minimum. If you get something that is less than 0, okay, that means it would be concave down, that would be a maximum. If you get something that is equal to 0, it's neither. It means it looks like something like this. Okay, it would be neither a min or a max, but it would still be a horizontal tangent. Why? Because f prime of x were equal to 0. That's very important to make sure you know. Mean value theorem, you better know it. That's the IROC is equal to the AROC. Whenever they use the words, there must be at least. There must be at least. Rolle's theorem, right? That's just a fancy word for mean value theorem, really means the same exact thing. And I already talked about the extreme value theorem. The IROC is equal to the AROC. Okay, whenever you see the at least must, okay, and if it says f double prime, well, then these are just f primes. Okay, it's like one less. Okay, it's just one less. And that's how you would use it. We did that recently in a free response question that we had. Okay, there we go. There's an antiderivative. Ooh, derivative of an antiderivative. Remember this guy? Remember that guy? The derivative. Don't miss this guy. This is for certain. What if a 7 was up there and a 5x squared was here and we had like t to the third dt? Well, how do I do that? Well, you plug the 7 in first, then take a derivative, which is 0, but then you have to plug this guy in, right? But then you have to chain it. Remember, whatever you plug in, you chain. And that would be my answer to that problem. Okay, be times 10x. Okay, Riemann sum, we talked about that in class. Make sure you paid attention. Okay, here we go. Here's particle motion. Okay, remember velocity is derivative of position, acceleration is the derivative of velocity, speed is the absolute value. Remember, speed also, when we talk about speed, is increasing if velocity and acceleration have the same side. It's decreasing if velocity and acceleration have opposite signs. Average value, not average rate of change. If it says average value, average velocity, it's the integral divided by the interval. If it's average acceleration, it's the integral divided by the interval. Okay. If it's displacement, that is just the integral from A to B. But if it's total distance, it's the absolute value. If you're dealing total distance something graphically, you've got to turn the negative guys into positive guys. Okay. Integration. Don't forget the plus C. It's just a natural log again. Average rate of change. Talked about that. Average value. Talked about that. Lhop. Remember, nowadays, Lhop. If you're Lhop, okay, if you're Lhop, if you get 0 for an answer, let's say that's 2, then you have to make sure you show the top is 0 by itself, and you have to make sure the bottom is 0 by itself. And then when you show they're both 0, you must tell the AP grader that you are using L'Hopital's rule. Yeah, sometimes they spell it with S, sometimes they don't. Okay, exponential growth. Remember, that's something you want to have memorized. If not, you have to separate and integrate it. Okay, which you always can separate and integrate, and you would get that as your answer. Whew. Volume. This is it for AB. This is our last page. Just please make sure you do the review. Okay, do the review that I put on there. I'm going to put even another review. Please do it. Disk, pi r squared. Okay, top minus bottom, right minus left. Washer, pi a to b, capital R squared minus little r squared. Okay, you have cross sections. If there's squares, top minus bottom, right minus left. Equilateral triangle. Remember, there's a formula. Radical 3 over 4, side squared. Isosceles triangle is a isosceles right triangle. It's 1/2. Top minus bottom. The base and the height would be the same. Rectangle. Okay, well, what's the width? Rectangle is really side by side times side, but one of the sides is going to be longer, and thus we get our K right there. Semicircle. Semicircle is the biggest mistakes. Do it the way I taught you to it. Don't try to remember a formula. Remember, in general, when you take the volume of something, it's the area of a cross-section if you're able to know what the area of the cross-section is. If you integrate that, that will give us volume. Okay, BC. So AB, alohas! Study it up, AB. You guys can all get that 4, all get that 5. Do it, get that work, and slam. Dunk it. All right, here we go. Integration by parts. There are your formula right now, right there. Remember, tabular method, make sure you know it. Okay, special case. If you have that guy memorized, you could use it, but you could always use integration by parts to get that very, very easily. All right, here we go. Vectors. Remember, vectors should be easy peasy Japanesey. You just have to know all of these formulas. Please do a couple AP questions that deal with parametrics. Please, 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 please. All right, here we go. Remember, this is the big one with parametrics. Please don't forget that, dude. Please don't forget the second derivative. We didn't even do one multiple choice question where it came up, but it has come up. Okay, it has come up. Remember, first derivative is just dy dt over dx dt. But if you do the second derivative, you take the derivative of this guy with respect to t, and then you divide it by dx dt. Okay, that could definitely be on there. Polar curves, make sure you know your polars. A lot of us have been forgetting that formula. It's 1/2, right? The integral of r squared d theta. Please have that guy memorized. These are some integrals that you should have memorized. You could always do them by doing u sub. Okay, you could always do them by doing u sub. Exponential growth, have that memorized. Have that guy memorized. Remember, L is the carrying capacity. If you just know this, you will get one or two questions correct. Remember, we didn't do any like this in a long time. The inflection point is your carrying capacity divided by 2. Huge, very important. Infinite series test. Know all of these dudes. It's too much to get into right now. Okay, it's too much to get into right now. Please make sure you know those guys. They will show up. Ratio test being by far the most important. Okay, error bounds. We practiced those like crazy. Come in for help if you need it. Remember, it is the next dude. If it ends up being Lagrange, then you just got to find out what your max derivative could be. Okay, and then it's really just the next dude. Improper integrals. Remember, if it is a free response question, you better make sure, okay, that you're able to do that. Okay, an integral that comes up often, it's improper because you could technically get you got your little infinity dude right there. Okay, Euler's method, you guys kind of rock and kill Euler's method. You guys kind of also do a good job with Taylor. Make sure you can do Taylor the very long way. Okay, Taylor series again. Maclaurin, remember, Maclaurin means it's centered around 0. You have to have these guys memorized. This guy rare shows up. This guy could show up. At the end of the day, you could always do these the long way, so make sure you know the long way. Boom, that is it. That is a wrap. That's AP Calculus 1, 2. And if you're a junior, it's Ichiban, Niban, Sanban. Because if you can get a 4 or 5, you will dominate Calc 3. Aloha. Study it up like crazy, pretty, please. Aloha, you guys.